Welcome to the College Basketball Bracket Science YouTube channel and podcast network, your encyclopedia. College basketball season and beyond. It is Thursday, February 26th. We are near March, and Thursday means we have a full field of 68 bracketology show. We're going to release every single seed line, 1 through 16 seeds. Before diving into that, though, we are going to talk about what just happened. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday wasn't the craziest week, but we did see some big results that influenced these seed line changes. We have a new 2 seed. Most notably, the 1 seeds are kind of set in stone right now. The bubble is getting tight. It's getting tougher and tougher to make these bracketology graphics. So we're going to dive into all that. And then to close out the show, we will, of course, preview this weekend ahead. We have some very top-heavy matchups on Saturday, a lot of ranked-on-ranked matchups. So we'll talk about those, some potential seed line implications. But the meat of the show, going to be our full field of 68 bracketology and the bubble watch. Before diving into it, just be sure to hit that like button before heading out, subscribe to the show, turn on post notifications so you stay up to date on the college basketball season and beyond. You can also follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's, where we post, we're posting a couple times a day on there, all the games to watch. We'll post our bracketology on there. Go check us out there. And then a fun little new project I've been working on. Check out our website, bracketscience.weebly.com. The link is also below. Starting to post all our content on there. I'm also doing a coaching carousel sort of thing on there where I'm predicting whether your team might have a new coach based on percentages. Like, for example, this team has a 45% chance of firing their coach and having a new coach, lead your program. So be sure to go check that out with the link below. It also has just all our content just kind of condensed into one on there. All right, let's talk about what happened this week. Talk about the seed line changes before diving into the bracketology. I'll get through these as quickly as possible. If you just are here for the bracketology, you can skip forward to the tan graphic. I won't be offended whatsoever because I know some people just want to see bracketology and bubble watch, but I am going to talk about these matchups. Number 5, Houston lost at number 14, Kansas 69-56. Houston now lost 3 games in a row, which just seems unheard of under Kelvin Sampson. But Kansas, obviously a very tough place to play. Trey White had 23 points, was 3 of 4 from 3 in this one, only attempted 9 shots and ended up with 23 points. So really good performance there. Flory Badunga and Bryson Tiller continue to be one of the best 1-2 defensive punches in the country. Down low, manning the middle for this Kansas team. Kansas, we'll see what this team's going to be because they can beat pretty much anyone, it seems. And Darren Pearson didn't even play that good in this one. But they have enough options where they can really step up. Their defensive presence is legit. Trey White, obviously Melvin Council and Darren Peterson can guard their position. They're really fast, really lengthy. And then, like I said, Tiller and Badunga down low. I'm starting to sort of really buy into this Kansas team. They lost that home game to Cincinnati, but that was in the midst. It was a trap game because it was in the midst of Iowa State, Arizona, Houston, and then Cincinnati was just in the middle there. So definitely a trap game, but Kansas gets the job done. Let's keep going. The opening of Big Monday was number 18, North Carolina, hosting Louisville, where they took them down 77-74. Seth Trimble, 30 points in this one. So they're still without Caleb Wilson. Henry Vasar is back, but Seth Trimble was the story in this one, scoring 30 to give North Carolina a huge win. And this will be big in the eyes of the committee if Caleb Wilson isn't back for the start of the NCAA tournament. I think he will be back. Everything I've heard of is hopefully he'll be back by the Duke game at the end of the season. But even if they're without him, this kind of showed that they can beat some top-level competition without Caleb Wilson in the lineup, so their seating shouldn't be adjusted too much for Louisville. Ryan Conwell and Michael Brown Jr. played really well in this one. However, Louisville does not have a Quad 1A win, which is very, very surprising to me. Louisville is 0-7 in Quad 1A, so they've had 7 opportunities. This was a Quad 1A game. Could not get the job done, but good win for North Carolina here. And then just in the Southland, Stephen F. Austin, who had a 2-game lead, lost at home to New Orleans, and McNeese won, so it is now just a 1-game lead in the Southland for Stephen F. Austin. It's a 2-headed race between them and McNeese. Moving on to Tuesday, let's talk about these results that happened. Wasn't the most top-heavy day, but there were some significant results. UCF won at BYU 97-84. Timus Folks had 24 points and 11 assists in this game. For UCF, you're going to be in the NCAA tournament. I don't get into the whole locking teams or whatever, but like UCF's going to be in the NCAA tournament. They have built up enough of a resume. Like those locks things, like someone will post and it's like Louisville or North Carolina is a lock to make the NCAA tournament. Yeah, no kidding. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament, but UCF going to be in the NCAA tournament. This did it for them. They were up 35 points at one point in this game to BYU. Obviously, BYU missing Richie Saunders, which I wasn't sure how it would go. I thought that they might be fine without Richie Saunders, just buying into the identity of just give AJ Devanza the ball and get out of the way. Even Rob Wright, Devanza played well, had 29 points in this one. Rob Wright had 20, just not even close. This is a tough loss for BYU. However, they're still fine in terms of seeding. They're going to be a 6 seed right now, which is a little better than you might expect, but we'll talk about them here in a little bit. Tennessee lost at Missouri, 73-69. Good for you, Missouri, for getting this job done. This win probably puts you, as of now, it puts you in the tournament. It probably is enough where you have enough wiggle room that you should be in the NCAA tournament, whether that's going to Dayton or whether that's being, already into the field of 64, not playing in the first four. For Missouri, it was T.O. Barrett, career high, 28 points, or career high in a Missouri uniform, 28 points in this game. Huge game for him. Mark Mitchell also played well for Tennessee. They win every game when they're not ranked, and then they get ranked, and they always seem to drop one. But, Missouri was playing for pretty much not their lives in this one, but they knew how much this meant. They got the job done. So good for Missouri in that one. Number 23, St. Louis lost to Dayton. Dayton wins 77-63. Letang for Dayton, 26 points, 10 rebounds. They couldn't stop him down low. St. Louis coach Josh Schertz went on an interview with John Rothstein a couple weeks ago. I believe it was after that loss to who had they just lost to? Rhode Island. It was right after that loss. And he kind of said, we're kind of plateauing a little bit. And I like to see coaches be honest about their teams. St. Louis was by far, and they still are, the class of the league. Now people want to, they're everyone's kind of Super Bowl. Everyone wants to beat them. They want to beat the ranked opponent in the A10, be the ones to take them down. And St. Louis is kind of plateauing out a little bit. They're not getting, as these other teams are getting better, St. Louis reached their peak. Not saying there's not more room to get better, but even when Josh Schertz comes out and says that, I thought that was interesting. But Dayton picks up a nice victory there. Moving on, Auburn loses at Oklahoma, 91-79. I know people don't like it. I don't like this Auburn team being near the field. I'm not even going to really disagree. However, by the numbers, they're still in the field right now. To me, they're not even in Dayton. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. I know it's going to be a very controversial topic. Seen a lot of people on Twitter and Instagram taken to the likes of not wanting Auburn in the NCAA tournament, but we'll talk about what their numbers might be here in a little bit. Teams that did not help themselves out whatsoever. In fact, may have killed their chances of becoming an NCAA tournament team. Not that they're dead. They still have a chance, but Indiana loses at home to Northwestern, 68-72. You can't have it. I know there was the controversial foul at the end of the game, and it was a foul. Tucker DeVries had a 3-pointer down 3 where the Northwestern defender smacked him on the wrist. It should have been 3 free throws, but you still shouldn't have even been in that position. I'm guessing this was just a game where too much pressure on them. They knew where their resume was, and this is a game that they knew they couldn't lose. Kind of got in their head, and they did end up losing the game. The foul call obviously wasn't good. It wasn't the right call. However, shouldn't have been in that situation no matter what. Just really struggled on the offensive end for Northwestern. Nick Martinelli, 28 points in this game. He had a really good showing. The legend of Northwestern has always been Boo Buie, just because he got him to the NCAA tournament a couple times, won a game. Nick Martinelli has had a fantastic career at Northwestern as well. He could have, I'm sure he could have transferred to a lot of places. He stuck around, and he should be one of the few players that really deserves the recognition from Northwestern. So great win for Northwestern. Cool to see Nick Martinelli really light it up on the main stage there. UCLA takes down USC in a rivalry game, 81-62. USC is struggling. They're probably not going to be in the NCAA tournament. Donovan Dent has been going off lately. 30 points, 7 assists, 5 of 6 from 3 in this one. UCLA is in good shape. They're probably fine. I don't think they're even in Dayton. I think they're better off than that. In fact, I don't even have them as a last 4 bye team. I would have them as like the 5th last bye team. So they're still in decent shape. Their metrics are fine. I think they've done enough where they'll be in. It's been a disappointing season. They were preseason top 15. Hasn't been going too fantastic. There's been a lot of controversy with Mick Cronin, but they do get the job done in this one. USC just hasn't been the same without Rodney Rice. New Mexico loses at Nevada, 67-60. New Mexico has been like the first couple teams out, hovering to last team in, second to last team in. They lose this one at Nevada. Nevada is very scrappy. They're good, but if New Mexico would have got this would have boosted them. Couldn't get the job done. I still have them on the outside looking in. So Nevada picks up the win there. TCU picks up a good win that they needed, 92-78 over Arizona State. I have TCU inside the field right now. We'll obviously talk about them a little bit more in the Bubble Watch, talk about their resume. Oklahoma State takes down West Virginia. These are two teams that I would probably have like 9th out, 10th out, depending on which way it goes. This game went to overtime, 91-84. Oklahoma State gets the job done. I'm not sure if there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the Big 12, but I don't think either of these two teams can quite get there. Number 2, Arizona won at Baylor 87-80. Baylor put up a good fight, but Arizona just a little too much down the stretch. Jaden Bradley and Braden Burries combined for 49 points. They just have so many ways to beat you. They're still playing without Koa Pete and Dwayne Aristode. I really like this Arizona team. I know like the whole thing is like they don't shoot threes. They can't shoot threes. I have confidence that Braden Burries can make threes. I have confidence that Jaden Bradley can make threes. I have confidence that Anthony Del Orso can also make threes. So I'm not completely worried about their three-point shooting. It is weird to see a team this high of a level not take very many threes, but they dominate you down low and they win pretty much every game they play. So I'm not worried about them. Number 11, Virginia kills NC State 90-61. NC State, just with a really, really weird resume. They just beat North Carolina. I know North Carolina was without guys by 24 the other day, but NC State has also gotten drilled by a couple of other teams, including Virginia. Virginia's 25-3. Ryan Odom has done a fantastic job. They have a huge one against Duke on Saturday, which we'll preview here in a little bit, but they're in second place in the SEC. They're by far your second best team in the ACC. In my opinion, Ryan Odom should be on the short list of Coach of the Year candidates. My Coach of the Year right now would be Jon Scheyer. In my opinion, he turned over the entire roster and they're number 1 in the country. I would go with Jon Scheyer right now. You got to throw Fred Hoiberg in the conversation, just bringing Nebraska to a probably protected seed. And I think you got to throw Ryan Odom in the conversation. 25-3 in year 1, completely turning over everything, has done a fantastic job. Virginia is like a fringe 3 or 4 seed right now. Cincinnati loses to number 16 Texas Tech 80-68. Cincinnati's bubble probably popped with this one. Just a little bit too much damage done earlier in the season. For Texas Tech, Christian Anderson, 31 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. I know it's going to be popular for, if Texas Tech is a 4 or 5 seed, people are probably going to take a lot of 13/12 seeds to take them down just because Texas Tech is without JT Toppin. Their best player was one of the candidates for National Player of the Year. I think Christian Anderson is so good that I think this team's still going to get to the Sweet 16. Christian, when you talk about like, there's always the talk about like, if there's one player who can just carry you to the Final Four, the answer for most people is going to be Darren Peterson this season, right? Because he's their, he's their guy. But Darren Peterson does have a lot of pieces around him as well. Christian Anderson to me should be in that conversation. I think Christian Anderson is the best pull-up shooter in the entire country. I think he's probably the second best shooter in general in the country behind Milan Momcilovic from Iowa State. Christian Anderson is awesome. He can make it from 30 feet. I think he should be a lottery pick. I haven't seen where he's really projected in the NBA draft or if he's going to be back for another year. I'm not sure, but he's awesome. He is fast. He can defend. He's a good rebounding guard. He's combined for the most points in terms of like points he accounts for. So assists as well, points plus assists. The total points that has come from that, he's like going to break the record by far. He is awesome. He is absolutely fantastic. Don't be surprised if Christian Anderson's like, oh my God, he's averaging 33 points and they're in the Elite 8. Like, I think he is that good. Their identity is going to shift a lot. They're going to be very, very 3-point dependent now without JT Toppin down low. However, I that's just how highly I think of Christian Anderson. I think he can take them. I mean, obviously, I don't think this team's going to win the national championship anymore without JT Toppin. I don't think they can quite get all the way there. But who's to say Christian Anderson can't take them, on a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament? He is awesome. All right, number 21, Miami of Ohio did win at Eastern Michigan, 74-64, so they're still undefeated. I have them seated a little higher than you might think. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. Number 1, Duke won at Notre Dame, 100-56. My goodness, Cam Boozer, 24 points, 13 rebounds. They led by 32 at the half, or was it 30 at the half? Not good under Micah Shrewsbury at Notre Dame there. Miami wins at Florida State, 83-73. Florida State's been scrappy as of late. Miami going to be in the NCAA tournament this year. Good season in year 1 under Jai Lucas. Kentucky wins at South Carolina. No surprise there. Michigan beats Minnesota. A little bit closer than you might think. Michigan gets the job done. Then Iowa State wins at Utah. Let's talk about this Wednesday graphic real quick before talking about our bracketology. Number 15, St. John's, and number 6, UConn on Wednesday was the big one, and it was not a game whatsoever. UConn wins 72-40. Terrace Reed Jr., 20 points, 11 rebounds in this game. St. John's went either 23 or 24 shots in a row that they missed. Yikes, this UConn defense was just energetic from the start. It was UConn the entire way. Terrace Reed was fantastic in this game. Just complete domination for this UConn defense in this one. UConn solidified at the 1 line right now. St. Mary's in Santa Clara. St. Mary's gets them 86-67. Santa Clara, they just haven't quite had the game where it's like, boom, you won that game, it boosts you. Like, you're probably going to be in the NCAA tournament. They're just kind of doing exactly what you should. You're an underdog in this game, you lose it. You're favored in this game, you win it. So Santa Clara, I still think they're fine just because of how bad the bubble is. We'll talk about them a little bit more in the bubble, but just haven't quite picked up that win that gets you there. But let's talk about St. Mary's. They're 26-4, just kind of flying under the radar. 26-4 with pretty much a new roster. I mean, a lot of new pieces on this roster playing significant minutes. This has been just a tremendous job by Randy Bennett, as we say every single season. San Diego State got a win that they desperately needed over Utah State, 89-72. I still don't think it's enough to get San Diego State in the bracket. We'll talk about their numbers here in a little bit, but it at least gives them a chance to potentially get in at large. Not sure how many opportunities they'll have, but good win there for San Diego State. Ties them atop the Mountain West standings as well in the regular season race. Ohio State and Iowa. Iowa wins 74-57. I turn on this game. It's 14-2 Ohio State. And I'm like, oh my God. Because I was thinking on the last show, we had some lagging issues on the last show before previewing the game, so I didn't get to really talk about the games. And I'm not just trying to toot my own horn here, but I was going to say in the preview, if you want to see one coach just coach complete circles around another coach, it's going to be this game. It's going to be Ben McCullum versus Jake Diebler. And then I turn on the game and it's 14-2 Ohio State. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't say that. Then Ben McCullum coached complete circles around Jake Diebler. It was just utter domination. They outscored him by 29 the rest of the way after that. Ben McCullum, Ohio State is so much more talented than Iowa. Ohio State did get John Mobley back, by the way, who was, I expect him to be out for a while, but he's already back. Iowa's scheme just so much better. Bennett Sturts was good in this one. Bulgaris was also good in this one. Like I said, Ohio State's so much more talent, but Iowa just has a much, much better basketball coach. Schemed around him, just was licking his chops when he saw this matchup. I know Ben McCullum was, so they get the job done there. Iowa will be in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State, very, very bubbly. We'll talk about him here in a little bit because that Northwestern versus Indiana result helped Ohio State a little bit. We'll talk about it. SMU lost at Cal. How about Cal? 73-69. Huge one for Cal. This is a quad two. It just moved to quad two. SMU was 30th in the net. They just dropped to 31st, so not a quad one win for Cal, but it could move into a quad one game with all these bubble teams losing. New Mexico losing. San Diego State not quite there, in my opinion. Cal, I think they're inside the tournament right now. We'll talk about them here in a little bit. Number 7, Florida wins at Texas, 84-71. Florida continues to dominate. Florida officially up to a 2 seed now. They're finally in the 2 seed category, in my opinion. They didn't even play that well in this game and still won by double figures over a top 30 KenPom team. So Florida's awesome. Georgia and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt won the game 88-80. Devin McLaughlin played really well in this game. The only note I have on this game, KenPom predicted this game 88-80. Vanderbilt over Georgia. Prediction exactly correct. Good stuff there, KenPom. Arkansas took down Texas A&M 99-84. Got another good game from Billy Richmond, and they always get a good game from Darius Acuff. Should be the SC Player of the Year. Wisconsin loses at Oregon 85-71. Oregon been playing a little better as of late. Oregon's boosted their metrics at least a little bit as of late. They won at USC. Now they take down Wisconsin. So it's only a quad 2 road loss for Wisconsin. But we'll talk about where Wisconsin fits in the field because it's very close to the 6/7 seeds. Wake Forest loses at Boston College 68-67. Boston College will most likely have a new coach next season. Wake Forest might too. Steve Forbes is solidified on the hot seat. Like I said, go check out that coaching carousel blog that we have on our website, linked down below in the description. All right, enough talking about the games. Let's talk about our bracketology. Here is our official seed list as of February 26th. So your 1 seeds, we've talked about them enough. Not much going to change. Duke, your number 1 overall seed. Michigan, number 2 overall seed. Arizona, number 3 overall seed. UConn, number 4 overall seed. UConn solidified in that position after that win over St. John's, especially with Iowa State losing earlier in the week. Iowa State is your first number 2 seed. Purdue is your second number 2 seed. So if you actually pull up, I'm going to go back and forth through some of these graphics. So if you actually find Purdue and you find Iowa State at 7 and 8, this is ranked by the net. You'll find Purdue has better resume-based metric average combined with predictive average, 7.7 compared to 8 in predictives and 5.3 compared to 9 to Iowa State. So we might be thinking, why isn't Purdue a little higher? Iowa State did win at Purdue earlier in the season. If it was if it was on a, if the game was played at Iowa State, maybe this is enough of a gap to have Purdue ahead of Iowa State, but the game was played at Purdue and Iowa State dominated them. So I think you got to give it to Iowa State as your as the first number 2 seed, and then Purdue right behind them, then Florida right behind them. Watch out for Florida. This team, I believe in our mailbag episode, I said that I think the highest they could get was probably the first 2 seed. They might be able to get up to a 1 seed. That win at Texas really boosted their strength of record, really boosted their wins above bubble. They're now 8th in strength of record, 7th in wins above bubble. If they can get that to like 4 or 5, they might have a chance at a 1 seed. This team is playing really, really good basketball. Illinois right behind them as your last number 3 seed. Yes, or as your last number 2 seed. Yes, no Houston. We'll talk about Houston here in a second. Kansas is now your first number 3 seed. With that head-to-head win over Houston, they have exactly the same resume-based averages. So both 9.3. Kansas has a big advantage inside KPI, which is kind of boosting them a little bit. And I'm not the biggest fan of KPI. However, with that head-to-head matchup and having a 9.3 average, I think it's Kansas, in my opinion, and Houston, unluckily, doesn't get to play Kansas at Houston this year. So splitting hairs here, but like I said, I'm not a huge head-to-head guy, but I know the committee does value that. So that's why I'm going to go with Kansas over Houston right now. Nebraska and Gonzaga still just your 3 seeds. They've been hanging on for a while here in that spot. First 4 seed is now Virginia. So when the committee came out with their top 4 seeds, it was with their 4 seeds, it was Texas Tech, then Vanderbilt, then Michigan State, then Virginia. So Vanderbilt lost to Tennessee earlier in the week. And with Virginia's domination of a week, they move ahead of Texas Tech, in my opinion. Even though Texas Tech and Michigan State did nothing wrong, I moved Virginia up to that first 4 seed with Texas Tech right behind them, then Michigan State right behind them. And then it was very close, in my opinion, between Tennessee and Alabama for the last 4. But then when Tennessee just lost to Missouri, it was no conversation, in my opinion. I did have Alabama ahead of Tennessee anyways before that. I thought it was Alabama, but I did see some people had Tennessee. But now it's Alabama, then Arkansas, then Tennessee, then Vanderbilt, in my opinion. So 4 SEC teams in a row there. With St. John's holding on to that last 5 seed. It's close between St. John's and North Carolina. However, St. John's actually has much better predictive numbers, like not even close, which is why I gave it to St. John's. And North Carolina inside the first 2 quadrants, only 8 and 6, which is kind of weird. They've had 9 quad 3 games. So that's why I gave it to St. John's, but it's really close. I'll be surprised if North Carolina isn't a top 5 seed. And then Louisville, I actually had North Carolina just behind Louisville. These 2 teams just flipped with that result. So North Carolina, first 6 seed, Louisville is your second 6 seed. BYU is your third 6 seed. I know their resume doesn't seem that fantastic, but when you look at their averages, it's not too bad. They're 22nd at wins above bubble, 24th in strength of record, and the predictives average out to 24 as well. With 6 quad 1 wins, they still have a pretty decent resume, although they're not playing very good basketball right now. Now, here's where I wanted to stop and talk about this discussion a little bit. Wisconsin, so let me just label off the teams. Wisconsin, UCF, Villanova, Kentucky, Utah State, St. Louis, St. Mary's. Here's where I'll cut it off. All of these teams are vying for the last 6 seed, in my opinion. I'll even throw Iowa in that conversation. Maybe even Iowa can get there. So you're looking at about 7 or 8 teams vying for this last 6 seed. I have Wisconsin right now, even though they just lost that game to Oregon, just because of their top tier wins. They have some of the best wins in the country. I'm confident that it would be Wisconsin right now. So Wisconsin, let's actually pull up these resumes. This is going to be on the second graphic because these teams are outside the top 30. So Wisconsin, you'll find at 34 and ranked by the net. So they're 5 and 7 inside quad 1, 6 and 2 in quad 2, 11 and 9 inside the first 2 quadrants with 3 quad 1A wins. That's just too much when you look at all the lists. Like Kentucky has 3 of them. However, they're 3 and 7. Texas A&M actually has 3 of them, but they're not going to be quite there. UCF does have 3 of them as well. And I have UCF up next, but just those 3 wins are so good, including one of the best wins in the country, a couple of the best wins in the country, honestly. So Wisconsin has played, I think they played their way to the 6 line, in my opinion, right now. But when we talk about the 7 seeds, this is going to be surprising to some. I think it's UCF. Let's talk about UCF's numbers. Their numbers are really, really good. So they're 44th here in the net, if you can find them. They're 25th in wins above bubble and in strength of record. That puts you at about a 7 seed. 22nd in KPI for an average of 24. I know their predictives aren't great. However, when you have this resume, this is very similar to the South Carolina resume that was a 6 seed a couple seasons ago. They just won on the road at BYU. You've proven you can win on the road. They're 3-3 inside of quad 1A, 5-5 inside of quad 1 with 0 losses outside the first 2 quadrants, 10-7. I think they're your first 7 seed. I think this team at some point, I know like the predictives are saying, look, they're 46th at KenPom, 48th at Torvik. Yeah, but at some point, your resume just outweighs that, and you've played yourself onto the first 7 line, in my opinion. We'll see how high they can climb if BYU and Wisconsin keep losing. We'll see. I think UCF will end up at the end of the season probably being a 7 or 8 seed. Villanova right behind them. So like I said, all of these teams, like, we're splitting hairs. Villanova and UCF, very, very close. UCF has better resume-based metrics. Barely. It's very, very close. Predictive metrics do definitely lean Villanova. However, Villanova has 0 quad 1A wins compared to UCF having 3. Villanova has 2 quad 1 wins in total compared to UCF having 5. Villanova has a quad 3 loss. UCF doesn't have a quad 3 loss. UCF is better inside the first 2 quadrants compared to Villanova. I give it to UCF over Villanova with Kentucky right behind them. Kentucky is also in decent shape because they have a lot of good wins. However, they're 9-10 inside the first 2 quadrants. They're sub 500. However, they do have 3 quad 1A wins. Like we said, 5 quad 1 wins. They've played a really tough schedule. However, they're a little bit behind in wins above bubble and strength of record. So got them right there. And then Utah State, a very hard resume to predict, in my opinion. Utah State has a strength of record of 37th, which isn't too awesome. However, they're 31st in wins above bubble, and they're 3-4 inside quad 1, 10-4 inside the first 2 quadrants. That's really good. They do have a quad 3 loss. So kind of a team you kind of got to really rely on the predictive / resume-based metrics, and I would have them slotted as this last 7 seed because I think they're definitely the last 7 seed in terms of this list right now. It's close, and I do think there's a gap. I'm confident right now if the season ended right now that Wisconsin would be the last 6 seed and that Utah State would be the last 7 seed because I think there's a little gap from there to St. Louis being the 8 seed. However, they're still right in the conversation to get up there. They have very similar metrics to Utah State, actually just a little bit behind, in my opinion. Don't have as many big wins, obviously, playing in the A10 compared to the Mountain West. And then St. Mary's right behind them. Took a little bit of a jump with that win yesterday against Santa Clara. St. Mary's has resume averages of 28.3. They're 22nd in net, 24th at KenPom. Don't sleep on St. Mary's. I know we say that every single season, but this team is good yet again. Iowa coming off the win against Ohio State, still as an 8 seed. And then NC State with one of the weirder resumes in the country. Like we said, they've beaten, they beat North Carolina, which we'll see what the committee does with that because North Carolina didn't have probably their 2 best players in that game with Henry Vasar and Caleb Wilson. However, it's not really North Carolina State fault, in my opinion, in that one, but they're still 11-8 inside the first 2 quadrants. They do have a quad 4 loss, which isn't good, but I think NC State's going to be fine as probably an 8 or 9 seed. Them in Miami, Florida is really close. Miami, Florida's resume isn't as good as I would have thought. All these teams, so I'll pull them up just so you can look at this graphic while I'm talking through it. But a lot of these teams, if you see these resume-based averages on the left, a lot of them in the 30s. It's splitting hairs. Iowa 30.3, St. Louis 31, NC State 32.7, SMU 36.7, Miami, Florida 30.3, Georgia 36.7, Wisconsin 30.3, Clemson 36. A ton of resume averages in the 30s, and there's a couple in 28. St. Mary's is 28. No, you can't see all the way up there, but so it's really, really close between these teams. But Miami, Florida is they have a resume average of 30.3. They've had a really good season. Over the strength of schedule just isn't quite there. So their strength of record is only 29th, which isn't bad. It's not bad whatsoever. But 30th in wins above bubble, and the predictives an average of 39. They only have 1 quad 1A win, which isn't, it's a quad 1A win. It's a good win. They're 3-4 inside quad 1, 10-5 inside the first 2 quadrants, but they do have a quad 3 loss. I think with just that strength of record and wins above bubble metric being similar to these other ones and worse predictives, I think they would be a 9 seed right now. However, there is a gap from Miami, in my opinion, to the next group that we'll talk about. SMU as a 9 seed, 4 quad 1 wins, however, 0 inside quad 1A. They're 7-9 inside the first 2 quadrants, just kind of in that mush of the 30 range. And then Clemson right behind them, they've really been struggling. Whoever Clemson plays in the first round, probably take the other team. Sorry, Clemson fans, they're struggling right now. And then I have Miami of Ohio as a 9 seed. This is probably going to be the highest you're going to see anyone have Miami of Ohio. They haven't lost. They have not lost. And then when you look at their wins above bubble, 32nd in wins above bubble, 22nd in strength of record. I don't think the only reason they would be you'll probably find a lot of people have them as like an 11 seed. The only reason you'll have them as an 11 seed is because of their predictives. They're 83rd at KenPom, 75th at Torvik. They're 48th in the net, which is solid. However, this is if the season ended today. If this team is undefeated, I don't see a way that this team's an 11 seed. I just don't see it. I think if they go undefeated, beat Akron in the MAC championship, that this team will be no higher than a 9 seed. I'm kind of going to stand on that hill. I know it's kind of going to be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. They're undefeated. You can't put what would they be, 32-0 team in the 11 seed range. I don't agree with that whatsoever. And I don't think the committee, I know there's been like a bunch of talk like Miami of Ohio versus Auburn. Like, who's it going to be? I think the committee is going to give it to Miami of Ohio. I genuinely believe this. They are undefeated. Yet again, this team has not lost. I have them as a 9 seed right now. I think this team's going to be an at-large caliber team. They're probably going to go undefeated. They have the rest of the way. They're favored by quite a few points in their last couple games. So they have an away game at Western Michigan. Western Michigan is terrible. They're favored by 11 at that one. They have a home game against Toledo. Toledo's not very good this season either. They're favored by 13 at home in that one. Then they go at Ohio. That might be your scariest one. I don't think Ohio is very good whatsoever this season. They're favored by 6 on the road in that one. So that would put you at 31-0 going into, if they win all 3 of those, going into the NCAA or to the MAC tournament, where I think they're fine. I genuinely think that this team's going to be an at-large team. Maybe that's just bias setting in because I definitely do want to see them. However, I think you within a team getting this far undefeated. Now, you can't lose like 2 of those last couple games and then lose in the MAC tournament. That might get you out. But as of now, I would have them as a 9 seed, not as a 10 or an 11 seed. All right, 10 seeds. Georgia, right after that. So like I said, Miami of Ohio, their resume average out to 34. They're 22nd in strength of record, 34. Georgia is worse than that. Georgia has a resume average of 36.7. Now, they're obviously much better in the predictive metrics, and they have more opportunities inside quad 1. However, they're 10-8 inside the first 2 quadrants with the quad 0-1 and quad 3. So 10-9 inside the first 2 quadrants. Guess what? Miami of Ohio is in that situation, 10-0. So that's why I have Miami above them. I genuinely think the committee would give it to them because 22nd in strength of record is just too good. But Georgia's still in fine shape. UCLA right behind them. These teams are all very close as well. Georgia through, I'll even give it Auburn. I know people aren't going to like it, but Georgia through Auburn. UCLA right behind them with very similar resume to Georgia. And then Missouri, I have as a 10 seed now. I have them boosted up. And then Texas A&M. Texas A&M's the team that a lot of people really like this season, and as do I. I think they're a good team. However, their resume is just not as good as you might think. Now, the KPI is holding them back a little bit. You can find them at 42nd here in the net, 56th in KPI, 36th in strength of record, 40th in wins above bubble for an average of 44. Like, that's worse than Santa Clara, you see. That's worse than, obviously like Miami of Ohio, like we just talked about. That's very similar to VCU. So you might be thinking, oh, wow, that's a lot worse. Why aren't they like a first 4 team or even outside the tournament? They do have 3 quad 1A wins, which is really good. 4 and 6 inside quad 1 in total. 8 and 9 inside the first 2 quadrants. That's pretty solid for a 10 seed. So got them inside the tournament right now. Then after that, Auburn as your first 11 seed. People are not going to love it whatsoever. So we're going to talk about their resume. And I know this is going to be people like the argument is going to be, well, they're Auburn. They're playing in the SEC and all these numbers are boosted towards the SEC. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm also not agreeing with that because like it is a lot of this is based on the schedule that you play. And Auburn has played the number 1 schedule in the entire country. So find them at 35th in the net. Their strength of record is 41st. So I know people are going to say, well, they boost the SEC. Everyone's ranked higher than they should be. So I get that argument. They're 42nd in wins above bubble. However, when it's all these metrics saying the same thing, I don't see them on the outside looking in my opinion. They're 37th in KPI. Now, if they keep losing, yeah, they will. They'll probably drop out but when you look at their quadrants, Yes, they're 7 and 13 inside the first 2 quadrants. they've played 20 games inside the first two quadrants. That should be noted. If you look at Baylor has played 21 inside the first two quadrants. Outside of that, I believe there's only a couple other teams that have played more. Kansas, Vanderbilt has tied with them, Alabama, Iowa State, and then Michigan, and there's one more I'm missing, Florida. So those are all your teams that have played 20 plus games inside the first two quadrants. Auburn is one of those. A lot of those other teams are much better than Auburn is. Don't get me wrong. I understand that, but they've played a really hard schedule. They have 5 quad one wins. We talk about it forever. Quad one wins or quad one losses really don't hurt you that much. Last year, North Carolina got in the tournament 1-11 inside quad one. Auburn is 5-11. I think they're going to be fine, but I know that's kind of a controversial topic going around college basketball social media right now. And then Texas right behind them. Texas was playing well, but they got to be a little bit careful. I'll actually pull back up this little one. They're 40th in the net. Look at their resume-based metrics. Ooh, it's a little bit close. 42nd in strength of record, 44th in wins above bubble. Their predictives are better, 31st at KenPom, like we said. They played a lot of quad one games as well. They have 5 quad one wins, which is why I think they're fine as a bye team right now, 7-10 inside the first two quadrants. Not great, a little closer than you might think. I don't think this team is near a lock to make the NCAA tournament, but with how bad the bubble is, I think they are still a bye team. All right, I'm going to pull up this bubble graphic so we can talk about the individual ones and the teams that just missed out. So like we said, last 4 byes: Missouri, Texas A&M, Auburn, Texas, and then Santa Clara, TCU, Cal, and Ohio State. I don't love it, but I still have them inside the field right now. So like we said, Santa Clara just hasn't really done anything wrong. I'll talk about these resumes a little bit more. So they're 41st in the net if you find them here. Like we said, you want to be inside like the top 45 in resume averages to feel decent about your chances. And they have an average of 43. 41st in wins above bubble, 43rd in strength of record. They have that quad 4 loss to Loyola Chicago, which is lingering. However, they're 8-6 inside the first two quadrants. Only one of those wins is a quad 1 win. So like I said, they've kind of beaten the teams that they should beat, just haven't beaten the teams that they shouldn't beat, if that makes sense. So I still have them in. I think they're fine. They're kind of benefiting from such a weak bubble. Right after that, we got TCU, who has another really weird resume. So they're going to be 46th in the net, as you find on this list. TCU 44th in strength of record, 45th in wins above bubble, so a little bit worse in that scenario. However, they have proven they can beat some good teams. They have 2 quad 1A wins, 4 quad 1 wins in total, 8-8 inside the first two quadrants. However, they have a quad 3 and a quad 4 loss. So really, really weird resume between TCU, one of the teams where it's like, what do you do with them? I have them as an 11 seed just because, once again, kind of taking advantage of a not so great bubble. Then after that, I do have Cal. Now, like we said, Cal did lose that last 4 in-game, or last 4 in-game. What am I talking about? They lost that quad 1 game. It turned from quad 1 to quad 2. SMU was 30th in the net. They're now 31st in the net. But Cal, you're going to find them a little bit lower on this graphic. They are actually 57th in the net. Cal is 43rd in wins above bubble, 46 in strength of record, 43rd in KPI for an average of 44. That win really did boost these metrics, along with 4 quad 1 wins. Could have 5 if SMU climbs all the way up there, and 0 losses outside the first 2 quadrants. I think I had them a little bit underrated in my last bracketology. I had them as, I believe, the first team in the next 4 out. But with all these teams losing, Ohio State losing, New Mexico losing, Virginia Tech just really didn't have much of a chance to move the needle. Indiana suffered a horrible loss, and then San Diego State still right there. This win did boost Cal's metrics. I have them in. Then I have Ohio State last. I don't love it. However, none of these next teams really deserve it. I kind of hope it ends up being Virginia Tech, quite frankly, because Virginia Tech at least has a couple of good wins. But Ohio State, so let's compare these kind of next metric or resumes because they are close. But Ohio State's strength of record and wins above bubble are not bad. They're 45th in strength of record, 46th in wins above bubble. Good predictives. Now they do have a quad 1 win, because Indiana lost that home game to Northwestern. That boosted Northwestern from 75th to 69th in the net. So that is now a quad 1 win for Ohio State. That's not a high-end quad 1 win, obviously. However, the strength of record and wins above bubble does include how good these quad 1 games are, how good these quad 2 games are all the way through. They're 7-11 inside the first 2 quadrants with 0 losses outside of it. I think they're the safest choice right now as the last team to get into the tournament. Next up, we have New Mexico. So if you find New Mexico, they're 45th on this graphic. Their resume averages is 49.7, but their wins above bubble is 50th compared to Ohio State 46. Strength of record 53rd compared to Ohio State's 45th. So the outlier is a little bit of KPI, and I do consider that. Ohio State has better predictives than New Mexico. New Mexico has 2 quad 1 wins compared to Ohio State, but they also have a quad 3 loss. So that kind of cancels it out, in my opinion, with a worse strength of record, worth wins above bubble. I went with Ohio State. Like I said, I don't love it. Virginia Tech right behind them. Virginia Tech's a little lower. They're 53rd in the net, 51st in strength of record, 51st in wins above bubble. Close, but 2 quad 1A wins. So could that boost them in? Like, I'm not saying mine is completely correct. Like, it's a committee. It's everyone's joint opinions together. There is a path where it's maybe Virginia Tech. I took a serious look at it. However, I just think with a worse strength of record and a worse wins above bubble, they would really be buying into the quadrant system if they put Virginia Tech above New Mexico and above Ohio State, because they have 2 quad 1A wins, 2 and 8 in total in quad 1, 8 and 9 inside the first 2 quadrants with a quad 3 loss. These 3 teams are really, really close. I think the safest pick is Ohio State. I'm not even going to say it's not Indiana, who I also have next. I'll just kind of give a reminder here. Indiana, then San Diego State, and then we'll just briefly touch on the next 4 in. Indiana's right ahead of Ohio State in this graphic, 38th versus 39th. If you look at their resume-based metrics, they're worse in every single one compared to Ohio State. Worse KPI, worse in strength record, worse in wins above bubble. They have better predictives outside of KenPom. However, they're 4 and 11 inside the first 2 quadrants compared to Ohio State's 7 and 11. That's too much of a gap, in my opinion. That's why I have Indiana outside the tournament looking in. Bad loss to Northwestern to boost them out there. And then San Diego State, thought that win over Utah State would boost them a little bit, but they still are 55th in strength of record, 53rd in wins above bubble. They have 2 quad 1 wins. However, they're only 7 and 7 inside the first 2 quadrants with a quad 3 loss. So these next 4 really, really close, in my opinion, to the likes of Ohio State and even Cal. I think Santa Clara and TCU would be fine right now. In my opinion, if it was on my ballot, the ones I would worry about would be Cal and Ohio State. This is also including there's no bid stealers. There's probably going to be some bid stealers. St. Louis doesn't win the A10 tournament. Dayton wins the A10 tournament. That boosts another one of these teams out, because you got to make room in the field. So Ohio State would be your first team out, at least according to this bracketology. Your next 4 out, who I genuinely don't really think any of these teams really have a chance. Maybe USC can get there. VCU, USC, Seton Hall, Cincinnati. Like I said, after that, I would have West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I didn't even look at which would be in order. Probably Oklahoma State, then West Virginia. So these next 4 out, I don't know if they have a path. USC plays in the Big Ten, so maybe. But yeah, we'll see. All right, let's go back to the main graphic and talk mid-majors. Talking about the 12 seeds now. So you see we would have South Carolina. Santa Clara taking on TCU, and Cal playing Ohio State in first 4. Then USF out of the American as your top 12 seed. Been playing really good basketball as of late under Brian Hodgson. Starting to click at the right time, it seems. Belmont might not be dead for an at-large. I know that might be crazy to say. So that's the one I did want to mention. I don't think they can get it. I don't have them in the next 4 out because I have them as the automatic qualifier right now. They're 50th in strength of record, 52nd in wins above bubble. That's really close to the likes of someone like New Mexico. That's better in both than San Diego State. However, they're 11 and 3 in quad 3. They're 5 and 1 in quad 2. So I don't know, but it's like it's actually kind of close. I would love to see Belmont get in this season as an at-large if they don't win it, because I think this team is pretty good. And to me, a lot of the other bubble teams don't really deserve it either. Yale right behind them did end up flipping Yale with Liberty. Liberty just lost at home to I don't even remember who they lost at home to, but they just lost at home to someone. So those 2 ended up flipping. So you've got Yale as your third 12, Liberty as your 4th. Behind them, Stephen F. Austin still as the McNeese automatic qualifier. High Point out of the Big South. They took down Winthrop in a big game at the top of the standings to, probably end up winning the Big South Conference. UNC Wilmington out of the CAA. They've kind of just been flying under the radar this whole season. They've had a really, really good year, been playing really good basketball as of late. The CAA conference tournament's going to be really fun, though. Hofstra is really good, and so is Charleston's been playing well as well. Utah Valley out of the WAC. Utah Valley, Cal Baptist, who will it be out of the WAC? I'm going to go with Utah Valley. However, Utah Valley has a really weird situation going on, battling with the WAC. The WAC wants to ban them from postseason play because they're leaving the WAC. It's a weird situation. I would expect them to be fine and win that case. That's ridiculous. Look out for the kids in that situation. 14 seeds, North Dakota State out of the Summit. They have a big one, which we're going to preview tonight. Game is played tonight on Thursday. We'll talk about that. Austin P right behind them, playing really good basketball as of late. Then UC Irvine out of the Big West, UC Irvine, Hawaii. There's a lot of teams battling in that conference. Navy in the Big West, Navy right behind them. I have Navy up to a 14 seed. This is going to seem weird to some. Navy's been on a tear as of late. This team is on fire right now. They're trying to find them here on the team sheet. It's kind of hard to find some of these mid-major teams. Oh well, but Navy is they're climbing as of late. They've only lost one time inside the Patriot League. They've been, kind of the back shadow of Colgate for a lot of years. And this team, here we go. I finally found them. They're 97th in strength of record, 87th in wins above. Oh, that's in the top 100. I have that up to a 14 seed right now. Now, they've played 23 games inside of Quadrant 4. However, they've won 21 of them. They're playing really good basketball right now. Predictives have taken a huge climb as of late, 137th at KenPom. That's not too bad. That's like 14 seed range. So Navy really boosted their resume. Got Troy right behind them out of the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt race, by the way, my goodness, it is about the closest I've ever seen a conference in my life. I'll go through those standings real quick here. Let me pull it up so I can just be 100% sure. Okay, so we have 4 teams tied atop of the conference right now with 1 game to play, by the way. Only 1 game to play. Troy, App State, South Alabama, and Marshall are all 11-6, tied for first. Right behind them, we have 3 other teams that are still vying for it too, that are 10-7. Arkansas State, Texas State, and Coastal Carolina. So 7 teams within 1 game of each other. It is as close of a race as I can ever remember. I have it as Troy right now just because they picked up some decent non-conference wins. So give it to then East Tennessee State out of the SoCon. The SoCon, I say it every single time we do a bracketology, is very weak this year. Got East Tennessee State out of there. Portland State out of the Big Sky. Merrimack out of the MAAC. Wright State, I actually flipped Wright State and Merrimack as of this morning. So Merrimack now is a 15 seed, Wright State as a 16 seed. The horizon is just not very good this year. UMBC out of the America East right behind them. We'll see if it can end up being NJIT or Vermont. But UMBC looks like the best team. Then LIU versus Howard in a first 4 game, and then Bethune-Cookman versus Southeast Missouri in a play-in game on the 16 seed line. All right, that was a lot of talking. That's the full seed list. Next up, I'm just going to preview these games for the weekend, most notably on Saturday. All righty, but we do have some really good Big Ten games on Thursday and Friday. So let's start on Thursday. Number 13, Michigan State goes to number 8, Purdue. Purdue favored by 7.5 in that one. 8 o'clock on Peacock, 9 o'clock on the Summit League Network, which I don't have. I don't think a lot of people have. North Dakota State at St. Thomas. These are your top 2 teams in the Summit League. Like we said, St. Thomas is favored at home by 4.5 in that one. If there's a way to stream this game, or if someone's like illegally streaming it on YouTube or something, would really encourage watching this game. It's going to be a fun one. 9 o'clock ESPN Plus, Portland State at Montana State, your top 2 teams in the Big Sky. Montana State actually favored by 2.5 at home in that one. Then 10 o'clock ESPN Plus, Big West action, UC Irvine versus Cal State Northridge. Cal State Northridge favored by 1.5. That's becoming a really tight race between UC Irvine, Cal State Northridge, and Hawaii out of the Big West. Let's move on to Friday. This just courtesy of the CBS Sports app, starting with undefeated Miami of Ohio at Western Michigan. Like we said, Miami of Ohio is favored by 11 on the road in that one. Western Michigan is not good, but just be careful with it. Every game means something. What's more important, what's like most impressive about this Miami run is like they're the talk of the sport, and every game is like, oh God, we can't lose. We can't lose. They don't. They never really even put themselves in a position to lose. Like, this team is good. Favored by 11 on the road, CBS Sports Network, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, ESPN2. We get Dayton at George Washington. Yeah, whatever there. That's a good game, but I'll be tuning in at 8 o'clock on Fox. Number 3, Michigan at number 10, Illinois. So this is a team, a 1 seed versus a 2 seed. Michigan 2 at KenPom. Illinois 4 at KenPom. So 2 top 4 teams via KenPom. Michigan is favored by 1 on the road in that one. I kind of have a take for this game. I think Michigan gets it done. Michigan's coming off that loss against Duke. They want to prove that that they're a top dog. I think their physicality is going to match up well with Illinois in this one. I think their their defenders can kind of frustrate Keaton Wagler just because he does get into the driving lane so well. I like Michigan to get the job done this one. 8 o'clock, ESPNU, Akron at Kent State, rivalry game, Northeast Ohio. Let's move on and talk about Saturday. This is the day to know. 12 o'clock, ESPN, your top 2 teams in the ACC. Number 11, Virginia versus number 1 in the country, Duke. Testa Ritter versus Cam Boozer. Very fun matchup. Duke favored by 10 at home in that one. 2 o'clock, ESPN2. Number 24, Louisville at Clemson. Rebound. They've been struggling. Can they get off this losing way and pick up a win? Louisville also coming off of a loss. I think Louisville's going to get the job done, but Brad Brownell really well Really good coach, obviously. 2 o'clock ESPN, number 25, Vanderbilt at Kentucky. Vanderbilt favored by 1 on the road. Remember, they killed Kentucky earlier in the season in Nashville. So we'll see if Kentucky can get some revenge. 2 o'clock CBS, San Diego State. So they do have another big game. I couldn't remember if they played New Mexico or they just played New Mexico. They're at New Mexico. New Mexico's favored by 3. Both teams need it. You have to have it. Both teams to get an at-large, most likely. This is the game. New Mexico favored by 3. 4 o'clock ESPN 2. Texas at Texas A&M, obviously kind of a rivalry game. Texas A&M favored by 3 at home in that one. 4 o'clock. That's on ESPN 2. I think I already said that. Number 14, Kansas at number 2, Arizona. 4 o'clock on ESPN. I don't like this next 2 little schedule. We'll talk about it here. Arizona's favored by 10 at home in that game. We'll see if Darren Peterson is able to play the full game. We'll see if hopefully Koa Pete's supposed to be back. I haven't seen, but need him back in the lineup. And then also at 4 o'clock on CBS, why are we scheduling 2 of like the big 4 teams in the Big 12 playing each other at the same time on different networks? I don't know what the scheduling thing was here, but number 16, Texas Tech and Christian Anderson at number 4, Iowa State. Iowa State favored by 7 at home. 6 o'clock ESPN. Alabama has been on a tear lately. Not a lot of people talking about Alabama. They've been playing really, really well. They were without LeBaron Philon last night and beat Mississippi State by 25, scored 100 points, playing really good. Tennessee, coming off a loss, they're favored by 3 at home. I'm curious to see this matchup because I really am starting to buy into both of these teams. 8 o'clock on Fox, Villanova at St. John. St. John's coming off that atrocious performance against UConn. They're favored by 4 at home. 8:30 ESPN, number 20, Arkansas, who is in second place in the SEC right now. It's Arkansas and Alabama, I believe. I should double check. But at number 7, Florida. Florida is on fire. They're favored by 8 at home. 10:30 ESPN. Number 9, Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Always good when we get this game at 10:30. Gonzaga favored by 2 on the road. And then just Sunday, briefly, Purdue, number 8 in the country, at Ohio State. Ohio State, you got to have it. Purdue's favored by 5 on the road. That's at 1:30 on CBS. Ohio State, this is your opportunity. Diebler has weirdly coached well against Purdue. He won at Purdue last year. He won like his first game ever coaching against Purdue at the Shot. So they got to have it. Indiana also has to have it. Home game against number 13 Michigan State. The game after Purdue and Ohio State, 3:45 on CBS. Indiana's got to get it done. Ohio State and Indiana, big weekends. Michigan State favored by 4 on the road, 5 o'clock. CBS Sports Network. Belmont at Illinois State. Illinois State has some talent. Belmont's really good. If Belmont can pick up this win, can they maybe get in the bubble conversation? Maybe we'll talk about it a little more. 7 o'clock CBS Sports Network. Charleston versus UNCW. Chris Mack into Coyote. UNC Wilmington's been playing very, very good basketball. UNC Wilmington is favored by 6 in that game. Belmont is favored only by 1 at Illinois State, by the way. Belmont's 55th at KenPom. UNC Wilmington is, what are they in the conference right now? They're 13-2 inside Conference USA. Their only 2 losses came to the same team, which was William and Mary. So William and Mary seems to have their number, but UNC Wilmington playing really good basketball this season. All right, that's going to do it for the show today. Kept it under an hour. There we go. We're getting closer. March is right around the corner. Be sure to come back tomorrow because the show tomorrow, I'm doing bracket stats on Friday shows. It's going to be the national championship one that seems to be everyone's favorite. Talking about the criteria you need to meet, some KenPom stuff. Everyone knows the AP poll, week 6 AP poll 1. I'm going to do the tiers based on that in tomorrow's show with the updated numbers. I already did a show on that. However, the numbers are obviously constantly changing. Teams are entering the conversation. Teams are leaving the conversation, the criteria or whatever. So I'm going to do that full show tomorrow. So be sure to come back for that. Hit the like button before heading out. Subscribe to the show. Turn on the post notifications. Follow us on Instagram at Bracket Science with 2 S's. And be sure to check out our website below, bracketscience.weebly.com. Everyone enjoy this weekend of hoops. We will talk to you again tomorrow, and then we'll talk to you again on Monday. Till then, take care.